I am Marc Silber. I'm a photographer and author in Carmel, California, and welcome to Advancing Your Photography. Our guest today is an old friend, Deanne Fitzmaurice. She's been on the show before many years ago. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning editorial and commercial photographer in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she's most known for her unique ability to go behind the scenes to discover and convey personal and emotional stories through her images. We're going to talk to her about that very specifically. Deanne, it is so great to have you back with us on Advancing Your Photography.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here, Mark. Thanks for the invite.
What are some of the key things that you use every time you pick up a camera or before you even pick one up?
A lot of my work is based on building relationships, making a human connection, building trust. So that's kind of the backbone to my photography. That's really what it is that I try to establish, to be able to go in deeper, for people to let me into their lives and to be able to capture some of those moments.
Yeah. And we're going to look at those. In fact, why don't we just jump over and we'll talk about some of your photos that do that. And I just picked out some, not randomly, but I thought the ones that would really represent this. And what is the story? We've got two guys on a horse. You seem to be right there with them. They're not paying any attention to you. What's the story behind this photograph?
Yeah, this was in Cuba, Trinidad, Cuba, and
Right.
This was in November of last year. I was there. I was leading a workshop for Summit Workshops, and it was beautiful evening light. Everything in Cuba is colorful and
It is.
it's just so vibrant. And, we just love to go out into the streets and photograph and just wander and really doing street photography. So no real plan, just letting things unfold.
Right. Somebody brought this question up. I'm going to just ask you. So the difference between street photography, documentary, and photojournalism. I know there's an overlap in all three, but how do you distinguish those three?
Wow. There's a lot of crossover with those three terms. So, and they are interchangeable, I think. What I would say is documentary tends to lend itself towards a long-term project.
Right.
Long-form storytelling. So something that you work on for an extended period of time, whatever that is, whether it's a month, 6 months, a year, years. Photojournalism, I think, more of the craft of going out, doing assignments, newspapers, magazines. There's a strong journalistic set of ethics that you follow in capturing the moments for authenticity and for credibility.
Right.
Street photography, for me, is just going out wandering on the streets without really an assignment and without a real purpose to the work.
Yeah.
To just go out and let things unfold. Really, capturing the essence of the place where you are. You can be doing this as a travel photographer or, just someone who's interested in elevating their craft of photography and getting comfortable being able to photograph people on the streets. And there's always that tricky thing of, do I ask them before I photograph them?
Right.
Do I photograph them and risk they might not like the fact that I photographed them? So there's this little dance that you do.
And with these guys, I'm assuming you probably didn't approach them, right? You were just standing on the side there and they came by?
Well, a lot of it is really becoming invisible. That's so much what I do. I try to become invisible. So I try to become part of the scene, part of the woodwork. And that happens from spending time. Like I was here on this specific corner for at least an hour.
Wow.
And I was there because these two little boys were playing stickball.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they had stick, and usually like a little bottle cap or something that they're playing baseball with on the streets. And so they were having a great time and they were ignoring me. Like at first they were looking at me, they were posing, and then they forgot about me. And I was able to start capturing some moments. And I was kind of timing it. I was looking at what was happening with the light. It was late afternoon, maybe 6, 7 o'clock. And sometimes there would be a great old classic car went by and was
Yeah.
kind of juxtaposing the different elements that were happening. And then all of a sudden, like it was out of central casting, these two horses come riding down the street. This, first one with the two guys, riding bareback, smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
And usually what happens is they see me, I lift up my camera, like instinctively, like, whoa, things are happening here. Lift
Yeah.
up my camera and I'm thinking, okay, I want to capture this whole scene, including these two little boys. And they look at me. I think one of them looked at me and the other one was kind of just looking at where he was going.
Yeah.
And then usually I'll just maybe shoot a frame and then just wait, and they usually stop. They usually stop looking at me. Sometimes if they're continually staring at me and I really want to capture more of a natural moment where it doesn't look like the photographer is part of the scene, I want them to forget about me, I might just put my camera down for a minute.
Yeah.
Or just kind of look a different way, and then they're not aware of the camera.
Yes. Yes, those are all important techniques to have down because, that art of being invisible is something that Henri Cartier-Bresson perfected. I heard the story. I asked somebody who worked with him, and I thought, many times he might go up and ask permission. He said, absolutely not. He usually got the photograph before anybody even knew he was there. So that definitely is an art.
A little bit more about
Sure.
becoming invisible. I try to travel light. I used to carry a fair amount of equipment with me, maybe two bodies. But when I'm out working like this, I try to just have one body with one lens and then a backup lens in a little
Wow.
pouch. So I try to travel really light, and that helps. You can move around easily, and you're not as intimidating looking. As someone who may be carrying a lot of equipment.
Tell us the story here.
Yeah, this is a story that I started in 2003. This little boy, Salah Khalaf, he came to America for medical treatment. He was living in Iraq and walking home from school one day with his brother, picked up what he thought was a ball, but it turned out to be a bomb. His older brother came to him and tried to get this from his hands, and it blew up. So it killed Salah's older brother, who was 16, and Salah at the time was 9.
Wow.
And he lost fingers on one hand, lost his hand, his right hand. His abdomen was blown open, and he lost an eye. So he came to America for medical treatment, and I started documenting his story. He and his dad came to California for Salah to be treated at Children's Hospital in Oakland. So I just started documenting his story and continued. I was working as a staff photographer at the San Francisco Chronicle.
Right.
And it was just like an ordinary everyday assignment. I was going out photographing everything, news, sports, entertainment. And this day, my editor came back and said, hey, Deanne, there's this little boy that was just brought into Children's Hospital. Can you go out and photograph him for tomorrow's paper? So I went out with writer Meredith May, went to the hospital, and that's where I started this project. It kind of went from a one-day project to a multi-year project, and I'm still in touch and photographing Salah to this day.
How many years ago was that? How old is he now, would you think?
It was 2003. He was 9 years old. He's
Okay.
about 24, 25 now. And I'm in touch with him. He's still in the Bay Area. All of his family's
Amazing.
here. And I've been photographing him over the years and just keeping in touch with him.
Now, here's an example of one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, which is layering and frames within frames. So maybe you could tell us about both of those in regards to this image.
Yes, this is in Cuba. This was really street photography, I would say. I was traveling in Cuba with a friend, Kenna Kosterman, and we were just walking down the street, and we see a barber shop, and it looked like it was kind of lively and interesting.
Yeah.
So we just walked in, and it was the epitome of Cuba, so full of life, music, dance. You could see it's a tiny place, but
Yeah.
the music was blaring. The barber here, he's just wearing an apron with no shirt under it.
I
He
love
was,
it.
yeah, he'd do a little bit of a haircut, and then he'd just break into dance. He grabbed my friend Kenna, started dancing with her. It was just a lively, lively scene. So there was a lot going on in a small space, but it really captured the essence of people in Cuba are just so alive. And
Yeah.
I felt like this captured that. It was colorful, but the way I love to photograph is to layer,
Yeah.
as saying the frame within a frame, where you look at a picture and, over on the right here, that's one photo, and over at the left is another photo. So as I'm looking at things unfolding, I'm always looking for a foreground, and I'm looking for a background, and I'm looking what's in front of the main subject, what's behind the main subject. If I move over here to the left, can I create multiple images within one frame? And to me, what that does is it adds complexity, it adds nuance, it adds storytelling elements. And to me, I think, if you work at it, I always try to build more of a sophisticated composition rather than a one layer composition, just adding some depth.
It gives it so much life and vitality, and because you feel like it's a two-dimensional photograph, but you feel the three-dimensionalness of it. I mean, it really gives you that sense of depth.
I take that as part of my craft of photography, is just looking and looking for building layers. Where can I find another layer?
Right. So, Deanne, which photograph won the Pulitzer Prize?
It was actually that photograph of the little boy that we saw earlier, the Iraqi boy. Now that was it was a series of 20 images that won the Pulitzer, and it was following Salah from 2003 all the way through to the end of 2004, and I was photographing him in the hospital. It was a matter of building trust with Salah and his dad, so that I could go in and photograph him and capture these difficult moments in the hospital while he had dozens of surgeries. And then as he left the hospital and he and his dad got an apartment in Oakland, they couldn't go back to Iraq because insurgents feared that they were American spies. So they settled in California, and I continued photographing his journey. He and his dad, and then they were granted asylum, and they were granted asylum for the mom and the rest of the family to come over from Iraq at the end of 2004. And so the writer and I, we traveled to Iraq, to the border of Iraq, and photographed the family coming back to America. So it was a series of those 20 images that won the Pulitzer. It won in 2005. I do have the entire series on my website if anyone wants to see that. And my
Great.
website is just my name, DeanneFitzmaurice.com.
There it is.
The Pulitzer can be a single image, or it can be up to 20 images. And as I said, this was awarded for a photo essay of these 20 images. It can be awarded, there are two categories in the Pulitzers. There is the news feature photography, and there's the News Photography Award, and there's the Feature Photography Award. And it was the Feature Photography Award that this won. Sometimes the Pulitzer can be won by a single individual, which this was the case with my Pulitzer, and sometimes it's awarded to a staff, like, the staff of Reuters or the photography staff of Associated Press or the New York Times.
Thank you for joining us, Deanne. It's always great to have you on the show. Take care. We'll connect really soon. Thanks for joining us, you guys. That was really amazing. There's a lot of lessons we learned there. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already done that, and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new episodes. And I love hearing from you guys, so leave your comments, like us, share with your friends, and remember to get out and capture your own images of life.